Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, we didn't mention she's funny too. Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I'm so excited this week. I say that every single show. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to stop saying that, but I get excited when I sit down. Some of you that have been with me since the beginning may remember one of my favorite shows about Spirit Emergency with Kylie Harris. She is here again, and I can't wait. We're going to talk about COVID-19, and we're going to talk about a couple other things and climate change and how it's all connected, and you're just going to love her. She is a research psychologist and an activist, and you're going to want to watch, I know you guys a lot of you subscribe to Medium. She's been doing some writing there. Kylie, how are you?
Hi, Karen. I'm great. Thank you for the great introduction.
Oh, but you were on, folks, so you'll go, if you haven't heard it, it was like, I think it was one of my first 10 podcasts, and we talked about Spirit Emergency, which is still one of my favorite topics. Why don't you give us a refresher on that?
Yes, absolutely. So basically so there's two terms, spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency, and they kind of get bunched in together. So I'll sort of unpack a little bit how the two terms are related, because they are very much related. So spiritual emergence basically refers to a process of awakening, so like an expansion of an individual's normal state of consciousness. And this type of experience may involve what would be considered spiritual or paranormal type experiences, like hearing voices or having visions of things that others can't see or hear, for example. But it may also involve more existential type issues, like experiencing a deeper sense of connectedness with all things, or a deeper understanding of how the universe operates, for example.
Yes.
So this process of awakening, or this sort of gradual process of spiritual emergence, which can just happen gradually like that and not cause any sorts of issues for people. However, it can become traumatic or difficult to cope with at certain points, and particularly if this happens really suddenly or without any warning. So sometimes an individual is kind of catapulted into this awakening process, and that can often happen, for example, in response to a trauma, or some kind of sort of a sudden traumatic experience, like death of a loved one or the loss of a job or a relationship breakdown or something like that. And so then what if the individual does then experience sort of a state of crisis, that the trauma might sort of facilitate for them, and then we generally refer to the experience as a spiritual emergency or a spiritual crisis. So I sort of think of spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency as being on a continuum rather than different things, and the degree of crisis that is inherent to the experience for that individual sort of determines whether they've shifted along that continuum into emergency, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And, I read for a lot of people that listen to the podcast. I do tarot readings, and a lot of my listeners are very connected to another podcast called Soberish. And not only will they get Spirit Emergency, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, that is happening now. And I mean, it is connected to COVID. I'm just going to leave that part there. But also another thing, just some advice, because a lot of people that I read for now and that are really going through this, they are all of a sudden lost from their families. All of a sudden they have a wife or a husband that doesn't get it, so to speak. Do you have any advice for folks like that?
Yeah, that is a tough one. Look, I mean, the thing about COVID-19 that is kind of going to be different for people, especially people who do have experience with spiritual emergence, or even if it's happening for them right now and it hasn't happened before, is that this is like a crisis that's happening for everyone. So it's like often when someone has a spiritual emergence type experience, it's happening to them largely in isolation, and they might be able to find support online, or they might find group or a person here and there who resonates with their experience, but it's often a very solitary experience. And this one is kind of different because this is a crisis that's happening to like everyone on the planet to some degree. And so I feel like there's going to be this period of everyone kind of catching up. Everyone sort of, I mean, like, not everyone's going to be on the same page, of course, and maybe some people won't sort of learn much from this experience, but I do feel like we're going to see this period of really rapid awakening, and it's going to happen to people who never thought they were going to have that kind of experience before. So look, I mean, I don't know if there's in that if you're in the experience right now and you are feeling isolated, that is tricky, especially since we're sort of all locked down, and it is harder to find that social connection with people in the physical sense, at least. However, there is kind of an explosion of online support happening because people in the spiritual emergence, which has been growing really rapidly over the last 5 years, they're all really mobilized. Like even me, myself, I've been connecting with people who I haven't met before within the community because we're all like, oh my goodness, this is kind of it. This is like what we've been waiting for. And we're all sort of in a state of crisis ourselves because we're all really triggered, because that's what this is for people. But we're all feeling really mobilized at the same time. So I hope that there's some solace in the fact that there actually is a lot of support for people online.
Yes.
And I can certainly give some of those resources for people throughout this interview.
Yes. And you know what else, folks? We are taping this on WhatsApp. So what I'm going to do, because I don't want to miss anything that we did so far, at the 20-minute mark, we're going to flip over to Zoom. I think Mike can fix this for me, but I feel like this is exactly what everybody wants to hear right now. So bear with me if there's a couple of cracks. I think I got it down that we may be able to stay with WhatsApp, but you're all the way over in Melbourne.
Yes, I am. I'm in Melbourne. We're in a different kind of part of the world over here. You guys are all heading into summer now, and we're heading into winter. We've just had like these horrific bushfires, and we're all basically still in a collective state of post-traumatic stress from that. So I can tell you that no one in Australia is ready for COVID-19. We certainly don't want to hear about it. It's a very inconvenient truth.
Wow. Yes. And I'm sitting here in LA and it's 98 degrees. And
okay.
I wasn't expecting it, though. It's a little too hot, a little too fast. And it's interesting because I know people are joking and they're saying it's the apocalypse, which it's not. It's just sort of that transition into the age of Aquarius. And when you say that, like some of us were waiting for it, I totally agree with that. Like, I even think, and I've said this a couple of times, I think here in the United States, we're going to have a decent summer, but I'm very worried about November, that this could be a swing back of the disease, or we might be having trouble with our election or something. But I do think people that are woke, it's kind of a weird term to say, but people that are sort of already on this bandwagon, I love what you just said about other ones are going to have experiences, because that could be very interesting.
Oh, yes, that could be very interesting. I feel like what we're going to see is kind of a mass psychosis, like a mass spiritual emergency. Because one of the things about spiritual emergency is that it can look very similar to clinical psychosis. This is one of the issues within the literature that researchers are trying to understand and trying to unpack its relationship with psychosis. Because, we live largely in a society that doesn't acknowledge spirituality still, which to people who are, as you said, woke, that's kind of baffling, that how do we still not acknowledge spirituality as an authentic experience? And so that's a large part of where the similarity to psychosis comes in, because, like, a lot of people have a spiritual experience, but they don't have that kind of framework within which to interpret it, because a lot of people are brought up without really any kind of introduction to spiritual practice, or some people might start up a spiritual practice like yoga or meditation not, have kind of an authentic spiritual guide or teacher to help them through it. And so that's been a large part of spiritual emergency within the West, was the introduction of these types of practice that many of them are designed to awaken and to facilitate spiritual experience, but then they're happening for people who don't then have a psychological framework to interpret them and to work through them, because the spiritual path is not an easy one. It's not one that's just all, flowers and rainbows. There is a darkness to it, and that needs to be addressed as part of the process. And so a large part of the problem with spirituality in the West is that when people start experiencing the darker undercurrents of awakening, they don't know how to process it. It's very frightening. It's very traumatic. And then for people, that can trigger previous trauma, or it can trigger certain like cognitive loops within our mind, revert back to like at the inner child, archetype, for example. If we've been wounded as a child, which we all are to some degree, this kind of experience can revert us back into child mode, and it can send us into states of mental illness and mental distress. And so a lot of people end up getting misdiagnosed or, given labels, and the experience is suppressed through medication or hospitalization. And a lot of, people are well-meaning. A lot of mental health professionals, for example, are well-meaning, but there's a lot of misunderstanding about these types of experiences. People who are awakening and understanding more about their experience are realizing that the way that they've been treated hasn't been very productive for their awakening process.
Yeah. So everybody out there that thinks you're crazy, you're not. That's basically what we're saying here.
Unless you're Donald Trump.
Unless you're Donald. Exactly. Oh my God. It's, I can't even. Today was the day, because my listeners know I tape these ahead. Today was the day of we're going to put Clorox or Lysol in our, I don't know.
Oh, no.
I know, it was just crazy. So
pour it on your cereal.
I know, exactly. That's what we're going to do. Yes. Okay.
Oh,
so for everybody and this is very interesting, because I have felt like COVID-19 is about sort of spiritually, that all you got now is the mirror. That's all you have right now to look into is the mirror. And it is bringing up a lot of trauma and a lot of healing, but it is where we're really supposed to be facing whatever that is.
That's right. So something that's been frustrating me as I've sort of like dived headfirst into, all of the writing of the information that's out there, which has been so overwhelming, and that in itself can be a trigger for trauma. You're like knowing where to start and then knowing when to pull out when you're kind of down this rabbit hole.
Right.
One of the things that's been frustrating me when I read sort of transpersonal interpretations of COVID-19 is this tendency to romanticize the experience and to only look at the opportunity. And there absolutely is opportunity, and it's like very, important and reassuring opportunity. However, there's also a lot of trauma that comes with it, and part of the spiritual path is facing that trauma and integrating that trauma. So one of the things that has been frustrating me about some transpersonal interpretations is this focus on the opportunity, but at the same time kind of downplaying the trauma aspect, because what that can do is that can encourage people to engage in what's termed spiritual bypass. So if people are looking at the spiritual aspect of this experience, what spiritual bypass can sort of encourage people to do is jump straight to the positive interpretations and the positive opportunity, but ignore or not face and address the darker aspects of it. So, this experience is going to bring up, it's kind of an unearthing experience. That's how I'm seeing it. It's forcing us to all look at ourselves, like you just said, look in the mirror, like we're stuck in our homes now where we can only look at our family and in the mirror at ourselves. And so spiritual bypass is it's an avoidant coping kind of defense mechanism. But the thing is that the spiritual path does include darkness, and walking that path and facing the darkness and integrating and accepting that darkness. That's the key to the opportunity of transformation that COVID-19 presents to us. So I guess the take-home message is we can't cheat. We can't just look at the opportunity. We have to face the darkness.
Yeah,
as uncomfortable as that is.
I know that spiritual bypass. I think that's where we get, I hate to use this term, but kind of the phony, it's all good. It's all good. And I usually, I know, when I hear someone say it's all good, it usually means this isn't going well at all. And I love there's always a meme out there that has the 2 tarot cards on it, and it says everyone thinks a spiritual awakening looks like this, and it's the Sun card, and then it says, but it really looks like this, and it's the Tower card. It really is the sort of the tearing down of the illusion. So, and I feel like, that's also a thing, like even for as part of my sort of thing here is this perfectionism thing, or punishing myself so hard for something when we're just human. We're all going to make mistakes. That I think women tend to do that a little more than men, but yeah. So all of you that are listening, I feel the heads nodding and the trauma you're going through, and I know you're right on board. So do you think COVID is actually going to help trigger those people that may have been dragging their feet on this or were unaware?
I think it's going to trigger everyone, to be honest. And I think that people who don't appear to be triggered are probably like really engaging in some heavy duty defense mechanisms. I think it's going to certainly straight up trigger people who have already had experience with spiritual emergence and emergency. But I think it is also going to trigger people who have been dragging their feet, and people are going to be willing to face it to varying degrees. So I think for people who are already familiar with spiritual emergency and with crisis and trauma, I think they're going to be the ones who are more mobilized. And then the others, I mean, like, we can see that it's triggering world leaders as well, right? And they're obviously the ones who are dragging their feet on a global scale. I think that there's going to be a great time of reckoning for people who have been.
I hope so.
For people who have been dragging their feet. Oh, I hope so as well.
I know. Isn't that awful? That's like I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not an it's all good person, and I don't mean to be negative, but sometimes sometimes you want to see karma, which probably is creating bad karma. But I know exactly what you mean, and also it's interesting with the world leaders that are getting. I mean, everybody's getting it, but it's just it is amazing that the world this is how we united the world, with a shell of fear over this one thing. And
well, that's a good point, because you just mentioned fear, and like fear is kind of is the core of the undercurrent of spiritual work. That's what people are afraid to face their own darkness. They're afraid to face that shadow side of spiritual work. And so to be united globally by a common fear, and that fear is death. So that's sort of the ultimate catalyst for existential crisis is that fear of death, where suddenly our own mortality is right in our faces and we have to face that. And part of the process of that is like having to reconcile your whole life, I guess. When someone has a near-death experience, which to some degree this kind of is for everyone, in the sense that that fear is really in our faces. And so when someone does have, like a near-death experience, or they're forced to face their own mortality, it kind of becomes, like akin to what you hear about near-death experiences, where people see their whole lives flash before their eyes, and they kind of have to very, very quickly reconcile things that have been holding them back in life, and reconcile those that are not allowing them to move forward in life. I think it's really interesting I think it's going to be really interesting to watch Boris Johnson now, because he's just had like a bona fide near-death experience.
Wow.
And whether it will change him or not, who knows? Not everyone is changed fundamentally by these types of things, but he is, praising socialized healthcare now, which is very swift turnaround for him. And it would be interesting if every world leader had an existential crisis. I think that the rich people in the world would be very scared.
I know, and I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, but that I didn't. Joe Biden was probably the only Democrat I wasn't excited about, and I feel like Bernie was my favorite, and I feel like if there was ever a time to realize we need socialized medicine, it's during a pandemic, and it just went right by.
Right.
Like, I was like, what? How did we miss that? And this is a very odd question. And I apologize. I don't really get political on my podcast, but I'm sure my listeners know I don't like Trump. So it's a weird, I was reading something where they said, this guy had a theory that a sociopath doesn't have any karma, because karma is what connects your soul to a higher source. So if you do something wrong, your connection to your higher source, your soul or higher self says, I would like to correct this. And then karma is induced. And he was saying that a sociopath doesn't have that connection. That's why there often isn't karma. And I hate to point the finger again, but I'm not seeing a lot of karma for Trump other than he's got to live with himself, Oh,
that's really interesting. I haven't heard that before. Like, it does have some intuitive value. I guess I have seen trauma unfold for people who I would maybe not go so far as to call sociopaths, but certainly people who have been very, very bad people. I don't know. I personally, I feel like Trump's big reckoning is coming.
Yeah.
But they call it Teflon Don.
Yeah.
No, this is a really interesting question. And just on Bernie, I'm also devastated that Bernie's out of the race. However, he's still on the ballot, so people can still vote for him.
Yeah.
And I agree that, like, everything that's happening right now is, like, how do people not see that everything that Bernie stands for is what we need to push us into this new paradigm?
Yeah.
Bernie is the one. But anyway, with regards to Trump, I see Trump as, and I hope people don't take offense to this, because, obviously I'm sort of, talking to the people who, are the more awakened people. So it's not necessarily these people who I'm sort of referencing here, but Trump is a manifestation of the American ego.
Yes.
Like the dark side of the American psyche. He's like this caricature for everything that is wrong about America.
Yes.
And I guess, like, there is this tendency, and I have definitely been a part of this as well, of finger pointing and feeling like you want to kind of blame for the state that the world is in. But I guess, like, what we all need to understand, and what has been, like, rapidly emerging for me as part of my own purging process of COVID-19, is that we all contribute to a national psyche and to a global psyche.
Yeah.
And so, even for people who really despise Trump and who didn't vote for him, in some ways we've all contributed to the manifestation of our world leaders. And that's why going whethin and healing whatever is ours is so essential during this time. Trump, whether or not Trump gets his karma, Trump is certainly a catalyst for this massive global unearthing, because he's just so blatant, right? Like, before him, people were still awakened to some degree about this dark underbelly and about this corruption, but Trump just puts it all out there. And so in some ways we can kind of thank him, because he's just laid it all out there on the table. Like, he's just basically come to the table and said, this is how corrupt everything is, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to tell you all about it.
Right.
So in some ways we can kind of say, okay, well, thank you for being so clear and so blatant about it, because now we can go about fixing it.
Yeah.
Because now there's absolutely no denying that all of this goes on, because no one's up there telling us. So I don't know. In some ways, like, I kind of see that Trump is already getting his just desserts, in the sense that he's just so stupid that he can't see that he's bringing about the crumble of the entire system.
Yeah.
So whether or not, he ends up in prison or...
Yes.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we do. We all need it. And he's this massive catalyst for everything that is wrong because he's just so obvious.
Yeah, that's a great way. He's so obvious. All right, we're going to take a break, folks. Folks, I'm going to listen to this, see if we need to switch over to Zoom. So be ready after the commercial. There may be a volume change, but I'm going to take a listen. So hang on. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, it's me doing an ad for me. That's right. I keep forgetting to say this at the end, so I had to take out an ad on my own podcast. First of all, thanks for listening, and I love all your feedback. If you have a comment or a story or just want to say hi, email me at karenrontowski@gmail.com. Also, go to karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com, and you can get my tarot class. That's right. It took me 2 years to put it together. It's 8 classes, about an hour each. You will be reading tarot by the end. While you're there, sign up for my email list. Everyone should do this. I only send out an email about every 2 to 3 months, and it's filled with typos and misspellings, so you know I haven't been kidnapped, and that's the best way to keep up on comedy dates and whatever is new. While you're there, you can book a 30 or 60-minute tarot reading, or you can get a gift certificate for somebody else. I got a little bit of merch left. If you want a Paranormal Karen Shungite sticker for your phone to make it safer, you can email me about that, or I now sell Paranormal Karen reusable straws. You take them with you wherever you go. Maybe you're doing cocaine with someone that doesn't look like they're clean. Boom, you got your own straw. karenrontowski.com. Okay, everybody, we're back, and I'm staying with WhatsApp because I apologize about a couple of crackles, but I think we would be in trouble if we hit Zoom. I swear to God, I just thought I saw a meteorite outside my window. Oh, God. Okay. Well, then, Kylie, that must mean go with WhatsApp, right? If you see a meteorite. So you...
It sounds like a sign to me.
Yes. I actually once was in a rental car that got hit by a meteorite, and it's like...
Oh my goodness.
I know. You cannot explain that to the rental car company. They do not care. It was the strangest experience. I know. I have to write a joke about it sometime.
Wow.
They thought I was drunk, and I was like, no, it came out of the sky. And so you see, as much as we're not talking about spiritual bypass, but you see COVID-19 as an opportunity, right?
I do, yes. I see it as an opportunity, but also we must remember that we can't avoid the darkness. So I guess, if we look first at the opportunity to unearth our own darkness and to face our own darkness, that should be our first focus before we try to jump ahead to the greater opportunity. But having said that, it's still a good idea to have an idea of what the greater opportunity in all of this is. Well, what I see as part of the greater opportunity of COVID-19 is this opportunity for a global reset, right? Because it's offering us all the chance to evolve and awaken, not only on an individual level, but on a global scale. And that's kind of mind-blowing, really. Like, I don't even know if our human minds are capable of comprehending what that could actually look like.
Right.
So, like, as I've kind of described, when an individual goes through this process of spiritual emergency, which is generally a traumatic experience if they are sort of shifting along that continuum into a state of crisis, if they're able to successfully navigate that process, which involves that facing of their trauma and their darkness and that integration of that dark side of their nature, which we all have, into their psyche, then the outcome of that for an individual is that they emerge spiritually reborn, like they become sort of revolutionized as a person. And so what this involves on the individual level is a paradigm shift on a cognitive level for a person. Essentially, like, their entire belief system, their previous belief system and their conscious understanding of the world suddenly becomes redundant. Like, they've got this new kind of insight, this new awakened insight. And so their old understanding of the world, their old cognitive structure is suddenly meaningless and outdated. It's kind of like they've had an upgrade. Like, if you want to think of it metaphorically, it's like they've had an upgrade and they've needed to now deprogram everything that they thought they knew and program their belief system, and then be also willing to continually work on that. Like, especially, if you look at spiritual programs like the 12 steps, it's all about you have to be continually open to revising what you think you believe.
Yes, we call
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. We call it getting a download. That's what we've heard.
Yes.
Like there's something, and in fact, it's so strange because I read tarot cards during the day, and Kylie knows me more as a comic than a tarot reader. That's so funny. And
Oh, so you do both, Karen.
Oh, that's right. You saw me on the stage. I do about 20 to 25 readings a week. And last week, and it's been weird because I've been doing it in COVID in sort of lockdown. So I had to stop. Like we were taking this whole week off because I felt, first of all, it's unbelievably exhausting. As I do the readings during the day, that's my energy going out. And my comedy at night is when my energy comes back in, and it's so off. But today and yesterday, I think I had two of the deepest meditations I have ever had. My friend Terry, that's a psychic, she said, you're rebooting. You're moving exactly what you just said. There's a download, there's a reboot, and it will happen faster if you clear your head for a week. When you, just a quick step back, when we talk about people dealing with their dark side, so there's these people that put out like a dark side journal where you write, it's actually very good. If anyone is interested, it's by a couple. They go by Lone Wolf. Put in Dark Side Journal, Lone Wolf. Only $15 you download it. But just to get a better definition of your dark side, it's not that we're all serial killers. It's sort of that acceptance. Like I have a what do you call it? I get mad in a flash. I get that. I've like, is it like going, well, hey, that's who I am, and I try to do good with it, but I get angry fast. Like maybe I'm all over the place now. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. I'll jump in if you like. Firstly, I'm still tripping out that you mentioned Lone Wolf because I just yesterday, as I was preparing for this interview, I read their page about spiritual bypass.
Oh, they're so good. Where are they?
It was really great. Yeah.
Do you know what?
I don't. Yeah.
I don't know where they are.
It was a really great page.
I was trying to get a hold of them for the podcast, and I can't figure out where they are.
Oh.
They're quite interesting.
I didn't look into that aspect. I didn't sort of look too much on their bio. I read through their spiritual bypass page and was like, because you kind of, when you're doing a bit of internet hopping, you read different perspectives. And I had read one on Psychology Today, but when I read this Lone Wolf one, I was like, yeah, they've nailed it. Yeah. So people should definitely check that out. I'll check out more of their stuff as well. So as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, of course.
Confirmation. Now watch out for a meteorite. You might get hit by a meteorite now if we have too many.
That sounds like the kind of thing that would only happen to you, Karen.
I know. Yes, isn't it? I know. It's hysterical. So dark side is just admitting, hey, I get jealous, or is it like...
Yeah. That's right. It's kind of like, within the psyche, and within the world and everything, that there has to be balance, right? And so I guess you can think of sayings like, you can't enjoy the more sweet when you've had the sour. It's that kind of balance, that kind of yin yang. We can't expect to be all light without any darkness. I when I explain things to my 3-year-old son, I like to talk in terms of light and darkness to kind of help him understand this balance of life. And so, we talk about things being light, but then, they have to be balanced out by a little bit of darkness. And it's about really integrating dark side and, yes, being aware of our shortcomings. So I'm aware, for example, that I have really short fuse and I have a temper.
You do too?
I do, Karen. You would never know it because I put on my best when I'm with you. But I do. I have a temper, and I'm a Gemini, right? So Geminis also have a tendency towards narcissism as well, apparently, I've been told. And so I have to watch that side of myself as well. I try to engage in things that make me feel really humble, because that for me is kind of an antidote to narcissism. But being aware of our less favorable qualities, that's our dark side. And I mean, some people have a stronger dark side than others. My husband, for example, I struggle to, really figure out his dark side. He's a really lovely, nice person, but he still has it as well. And it's just a little like he gets a little bit sulky sometimes if he doesn't get his way. So that can be part of someone's dark side as well. And I guess like an indication that you can get is that it's a part of yourself that you don't want to think about.
Right.
It's that part of yourself that a little bit icky for you, and that if someone points it out to you, you don't want to hear it. Like anything that you kind of find yourself pushing against or fighting against or wanting to avoid, chances it's your dark side, and that's what you should really try to have a look at. And you mentioned perfectionism. That can also be, part of some dark side as well. But a part of that also, and I relate to that, is forgiving yourself.
Right.
So, if you're a person who wants to do everything perfectly,
the phone just keeps beeping out. I'm like hanging on your every word, and then it beeps out. But go ahead. So I know this is so great. Okay, I think we're good. I have.
Are you sure?
Yes, international is so hard. I went through this with Richard Sugg. We had a tape, I think, 3 times, but I think we're back. I don't know why the phone does that, and then it's good for like 5 minutes. But yes, go ahead. And you were saying perfectionism. I wonder if. Who else has a fuse is me and you and the Dalai Lama. And I'm wondering if that is, and I say that because I wonder if that's a spirit, kind of a thing of a spiritual person, because I'm Leo with Gemini rising. So I've got ego with Leo and then the narcissism of Gemini. So I try and do the same thing. But I wonder if that is, a lot of spiritual people have that. It's just a hot fuse.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, I guess, if you think about, like, I often think about having sort of an antenna in my head. And I guess if you're kind of a live wire person who's tuning into things and picking up on things, then sometimes you could short circuit, right? And then that could look like a bit of a blowout.
Right.
Okay. I kind of think of it that way. Someone who I also really listening to is Russell Brand, and like I've kind of followed his career from when he started. I can't even remember what his first show was called now, but it's really, really open about his flaws and about his own dark side. He's got obviously a troubled past of substance abuse issues and things like that, but what I really respect about him is that, and he acknowledges that he's also got a big ego that he's struggled with throughout his life, but he really just puts it all out there, and like as part of his comedy shows, he talks a lot about his own shortcomings and his own dark side, and I think that is a way that you can also sort of help to combat that, is by talking about it and just being really honest about it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I always say usually in comedy, whatever makes you uncomfortable, that's what you have to go into, however you present that, whether it's with a joke or not. It's so funny because I wasn't that much of a Russell Brand fan, but his YouTube channel has been phenomenal lately. Like maybe since because I was kind of like meh, and which is hysterical that I would be like meh, because I'm sort of the same thing. I'm a comedian that's doing spiritual stuff, so so it was like a mirror. But I think his stuff is fantastic now. I don't think I'd ever be able to get a hold of him, but yeah, he is a great example of that, and wonderful. Okay, so whatever kind of makes you uncomfortable or you would be embarrassed to say, and I always say go right into there, say
that's right,
make a joke about it. Yes, so this is our opportunity to face all that.
That's right. And I think a lot of people will find that what they're avoiding is actually not as scary as they think it is. Like we make it really taboo. We have these triggers and we're very sensitive to them, and like don't want them to be touched in any way, because as soon as we start feeling that ickiness, we just want it to go away. But I reckon a lot of people, and myself included, will find that if you actually do find the courage to look at those things, they're not as scary as you think they are. Like, unless you are Donald Trump. But for the average person who's not a sociopath, who is a good person but just has, you know, some less than favorable qualities, they're not going to be that bad. And if we can all try and forgive ourselves for these things, like try, you know, forgive yourself for having a short fuse and a hot temper, forgive yourself for not getting everything perfect all of the time. If you can really try and, you know, foster that self-forgiveness, you know, we project onto others what we the way we treat ourselves. And so if we can all take this opportunity to start giving ourselves and loving ourselves, then when we emerge from this corona cocoon, that's what we'll then be projecting onto other people. And like, I know that it starts sounding a little bit airy fairy, but it's kind of really true. Like these things that sound like you know, just phrases, they're actually really simple and true. If we start forgiving ourselves, then we're going to forgive other people.
Right.
And I mean, can we imagine what forgiveness on a global scale would look like?
No,
Pretty amazing.
You know, I'm trying to write a joke about that. It's very interesting. I've also found, and I think about 10 years ago, I discovered the real power of apology. Like I really had to learn how to apologize. And I think that I've made better friends with people that either have screwed up and I've forgiven them, or the opposite. And also the other thing, if you don't face your dark side, what I find is it mirrors. Like all of a sudden I'll have 3 friends and I'll have a problem with all 3, and it'll be the same problem, and I'll have to go, oh, that's me. That's what I'm doing. You know, it's very funny because like everybody knows, this is taped a little ahead. I think we're in the first week of June, which hopefully you guys are listening to this and we have a little more space to move. But I had to the other day, I had to put out a forgiveness jar. And every time I get something starts to make that loop in my head, I write it down and I forgive it and I put it in the jar and I have to forgive it.
But that's a great idea.
Yeah, but I always thought, you know, we, especially in this country, we do not appreciate the strength of forgiveness. And the joke I was trying to make is you'll never see a football team named the Forgivers. Nobody will ever, you know what I mean? Like, but so this will be our global revolution. When you see that, how do you kind of see the other side of it, or it just seems like an open view?
Well, yeah, that's where we're leading to, this idea of a global consciousness revolution. So because, you know, through the research that we've done so far, we can see that for an individual who goes through this process, it's kind of like an individual revolution of their belief system. Because this is a global crisis, I do see it as an opportunity for a global consciousness revolution. So that means like the unearthing of the global dark side, and that's going to look pretty mad for a while. Mad for a while. You know, we've already sort of seen the beginnings of it with this so-called Trump derangement, and I've been reading articles about you know, people here because of their anxiety over Trump and all that has been unearthed already, you know, through his presidency. But so I guess what I see is that we are going to see a lot of people flipping out. We're going to see kind of like psychosis, a global period of chaos and disorganization and blame and anger, because a part of that unearthing process, it's like a purge. You know, when you think about, for example, shamanic cultures, you know, who like ayahuasca and things like that, there's actually a physical purging that comes along with that. If you do an ayahuasca session, there's obviously a physical purging, like a vomiting session. And so I kind of see this experience as like an emotional and a spiritual purge. And so as part of that, it's like we have to get out all of this negativity, all of this darkness. And so there's going to be a lot of anger, be a lot of blame and a lot of finger pointing. And as I said, you know, I've fallen victim to that as well. Yeah. I got one of my colleagues to to read the article I was writing, and he was like, you know, oh, I think you might be caught up in a postmodern mindset of anger and victimhood. And I was kind of like, he's right, I am. But it was actually really healing for him to point that out to me, because I realized that I don't have to be a victim to that. I have become, you know, a victim through acknowledging there has been victimization in the world, but we don't need to stay in that. If we can purge it and get out, then we don't have to be victims anymore. We can actually take control, because, as I said earlier, this is what we've created in our world is a manifestation of our keys.
Yeah.
And so
that
the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so sorry that sometimes it bugs out and I'm like, oh, wait, the phone there. It's so interesting. You talked about the ayahuasca purge, because I've never thrown up on ayahuasca, but I believe I was having purges last year. Here come the police. And I said this to a friend of mine, and she sort of said the same thing, was that there was just, and this was probably in November, just a night where for no reason at all, I threw up more than I had eaten in a week. And the next day I woke up and I knew that. I wonder this, I'm going to go way out here, Kylie, but I bet you'll go with me. The thought, one of the spiritual things sort of, flying around is that we're supposed to have our DNA changed. There's something being added or changing our DNA for the spiritual growth, which someone said that's what a virus does. And I wonder if that's sort of the spiritual overhaul, that we're all having our DNA changed, maybe that's why some people barely get it and some people are just really getting it. That new generation of crystal children or rainbow children aren't having as much trouble with it. But I thought that's an interesting theory.
That is an interesting theory, and I haven't gone down a lot of these rabbit holes, mainly because I haven't had time.
Right.
I've got my son home with me every day now. But that is really interesting, because it's kind of like scientists are kind of flipping out over the fact that this doesn't seem to be affecting children in the way that a regular flu would. Children would usually be one of the vulnerable populations. And I do recall, thinking at the beginning, oh, this is interesting that it's not affecting the next generation. And then I became really kind of curious to see if it would be affecting Indigenous cultures as well. And I mean, we don't have the data yet to see whether that is the case. Indigenous Australians here to try and get proper protections for them. But there has been that little part of me wondering, like, as far as I'm aware, no Indigenous people have died yet, and it will be interesting at the end of it to look back and see the percentage of children and Indigenous people who are affected by this compared to the rest of the population. So it's certainly a very interesting angle to explore further. And the idea of the DNA changing, I don't know, maybe that's part of this whole idea of a paradigm shift, that we need to be fundamentally changed, like on a cellular level, in order to
grow. It's funny, when you find out about that, if you can email me or get back, because here is the other thing, and not everybody's on this boat, but I think it's 5G. I think 5G is changing those towers are very close, and they have not done the studies, and the guys putting up the towers are getting really sick. And they, a lot of people here in the U.S. are now finding out they had it a while ago. Some people have the antibodies and they don't know why. And everybody, they wanted to kind of point at Wuhan, which they did say Wuhan was the first city to completely be covered with 5G. But I think it was there before. And I think some people, even in this country, had it before. So it's every day they find out something a little where I'm like, that's a little more interesting, but I don't know. But we'll do this. We'll take a break and then we'll come right back with a blueprint of how this is going to help us with the climate. Hang on, folks. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks.
Okay, so we're back. So now you're in your genius, Kylie. You have connected this. I just love the way you were talking about putting a blueprint of how we handled this with climate change.
That's what I see as one of the potential opportunities of this global consciousness revolution. So I do see this as an opportunity to, I like to use the word co-create, which kind of means that like we're not stuck in like a predetermined course. You know, I feel like we're all, as part of this purging process, as part of global healing process, we're kind of stepping into this new paradigm where we're able to co-create with one another. So that means that we're all able to, through our collective psyches, create the new normal, right? So we're already seeing, for example, you know, these calls to get back to business as usual. Oh, we've got to save the economy, we've got to get back to business as usual. And I don't want to downplay the fact that a lot of people are severely affected by, obviously, an economic crash and a complete shutdown.
Right.
However, I think looking from a bigger picture, the idea of getting back to business as normal is terrifying for me, because business as normal is what got us here. Business as normal doesn't work for the majority of us, right? It works for the elite. It works for the 1% of the population that owns more than half of the world's wealth. But I don't think normal that we should be striving to get back to.
No.
So, you know, I think that we need to be to co-create, and we need to be constructing a new normal. And this is also something that individuals who experience spiritual emergency, this is something that happens for them. You know, once they realize that their old normal doesn't work for them anymore, they have to construct a new normal for themselves. And so I think that what we have to do globally and collectively is create a new normal that isn't going to get us to the place that we're at right now, right? It's got to be one that works for humanity and that works for the planet. And so in terms of, like a blueprint, you know, when we look at the climate crisis, which is going to be waiting for us when we emerge from Corona, the climate crisis is like a chronic crisis. It's a chronic crisis that for a lot of people still seems really abstract. And I can tell you that here in Australia, after experiencing the most horrific bushfire season that we have ever seen, climate change is a lot more real for people now. It was literally on our doorsteps. And I mean, we had, like, within the space of a week, we had hailstones the size of like tennis balls, and then we had dirt from the desert literally on our doorstep.
Wow.
So climate change for people here in Australia is a lot more real. And so I think that what has been part of the problem with addressing climate change is that it does seem very abstract to a lot of people. It's kind of this far off thing. It's not, you know, we're not seeing it for the large part within our daily lives. And so there has been this cognitive dissonance, this ability to compartmentalize and to think, oh, that's a problem for another day. And we still have a lot of climate deniers, which just seems so mind-boggling to me. But I think, you know, COVID-19 is not a chronic crisis, it's an acute crisis. And so what we've seen with COVID is, you know, this absolute necessity to mobilize immediately in order to deal with this chronic crisis. And what that has shown us is that we can act quickly. We can completely restructure our entire society in order to deal with a crisis. And so what we need to do, those of us mobilized by this, we need to like seize that and hold on to that and hold that up to these people in power and keep reminding them, no, this is what's possible because we've just done it. We've just basically created this infrastructure that can take us forward to address the climate crisis. I mean, I don't know if you've seen like some of these amazing pictures of animals roaming the and, you know, people in Himalayas for the first time in I don't know how long. All of these rivers are suddenly pristine. The canals in Venice are suddenly, you know, sparkling blue.
Yeah.
It hasn't long for Mother Nature to take back what she needs. So I do.
That is, you know, not only that, I've never wear sunglasses, and LA is so bright right now because of the pollution is gone. I have to, I can't ride my bike anymore. It's so bright. Not only that, I know exactly what you're talking about, because when I go to Utah, when I like play, Utah's one of my favorite places to do comedy. Their air is so clear. Why would they even think about it? But it's so, you're right, it's so in our faces now about how beautiful it is. You know, it's another weird spirit thing that's going on with people is I feel like I have been planting little succulents all over. I've been planting little lemon trees inside my apartment. Like, and I saw another comedian who I was like, what? And she started growing micro vegetables or in her, and I was like, people are getting this urge to become self-reliant. I want to grow my own food. Yeah. I want the air to be clean. I want the water to be clean. So you're right on target.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I kind of feel like, you know, Mother Nature has locked us down because she's like, all right, that's enough. You're all in timeout. You're all going to timeout because Mummy needs a break.
Exactly.
I think I saw a funny meme or something. It might have been a comedian, Stephen Colbert, maybe, saying that Mother Nature does every other mother wants for Mother's Day. She wants the kids to just go away, just get locked down so that Mummy can sit back and just, you know, put her feet up and have a drink or whatever. I kind of feel like that's what Mother Nature is doing to us. You know, we're all in time out because she's like, no, enough's enough. You've plundered me for long enough. I'm taking a break.
Well,
and you know,
and this, I know I'll get letters on this, but I'm vegan, and I say animal rights vegan. I'm not, you know, I just want the animals to be treated right. And in this country, 15 of the biggest meat places are getting closed down because everyone that works in the meat industry is getting sick. And also, but then it kills me because they're just euthanizing the animals that are excess. And I was like, just let them go. Let them go. Whatever.
Let them run wild in the street.
Yeah, let them at least have a good time before you. But that's exactly true. So you're kind of thinking everybody should stay on, when this is over, stay on this track or encourage more action with climate change.
That's right. So this is the activist being really activated right now, you know, because there is going to be this gaslighting. Gaslighting is this abusive technique that like leaders use and that abusive people use to try and make people question their own sanity and question their own reality. So I think I saw Donald Trump even saying recently something like, oh, when this is over, we all just need to forget about it. Right. Why would we want to forget about it? Like, we don't forget about September 11. We don't forget about all of our soldiers who were killed in war. Why are we going to forget about this one? Is it because this one is the only one that's really like having this severely damaging effect on the economy and on our, you know, ability to get back to business as usual? So we all need to be looking at these wonderful things that nature is showing us right now and remembering those things and holding on to those things and then holding them up to anyone who's trying to force us to return to business as usual and saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And I really think that this is going to be a time for self-governance, you know, so people putting their own infrastructure in place. Anyone who can work from home, do it. Keep doing it. Keep becoming self-sufficient and engaging in sustainable practices, the things that we're kind of having to do right now, or we're, you know, in lockdown and having to come up with innovative ideas to keep getting on with our own daily lives. Take these things forward, because this can be the infrastructure that we are setting up right now, can be what can take us forward to create a better future, one that is not so polluting, you know. And I mean, it does need to happen on that larger scale, but if everyone, you know, is able to harness and to see and to remember these really beneficial impacts that we're seeing as a result of all being in lockdown, then I believe that we can start this movement of self-governance where, we're just saying, no, that's enough. We're not going to be gaslighted anymore. We're not going to allow you to try and erase this from our memories. We remember, and we're not going to forget this, and we're not going to let you forget it either.
And it's interesting. I love that idea. More people working from home. And I think people that are working from home right now are like, yes, I agree. In fact, I have a friend that has been begging to work from home and they would never let her.
Yeah.
And now she is. But it's real interesting. Those little things, like you said, it's so funny because I ordered a Berkey water filter system, and because I'm so sick of the chemicals, I tried to get I'm off on a strange offshoot now, but it's the other thing that I feel like. And this has happened, I believe, this last year for me, where everything that, plastic bags for dog poop, all of a sudden I was like, why so many bags? Why so many, you know what I mean? Like even the Tupperware, I'm now the old lady that has saved every jar and every plastic thing that has ever come in to be reused for something else. And I'm almost down to 0 paper towels and I haven't bought plastic bags in years because I can just get everything the other way. But what else is interesting is in this time, folks, and it's funny that you brought up gaslighting, and I'm going to badmouth a couple of things here that I usually don't do, but it's, this is where you do get to listen to your heart. Okay. This is the quiet where you're not in traffic, where you listen to what do I want to do? What feels right? Because it doesn't feel right to carry all this garbage out that could be recycled, or there's all these things that are shifting that if you just listen to yourself, you'll hear them. And there's a channel called Gaia, and it's supposed to be this spiritual, and I tried it, and all of a sudden a guy's talking about pollution and this and that, and then it turned into a climate denier. And there's and it has, I know, and it has seeped into the paranormal community somehow that it's not and now I can't watch that channel. Like I'm really fast to go, I'm sure I'm cutting off my nose despite my face, probably going to be a great place to have a TV show with what I do. But it was like, I was like, you just sucked me in 5-10 minutes and then you hit me with but wait, look at, we don't have to change, here's why. And
wow.
And I believe it's the owner of that channel. So folks, you don't have to boycott everything. I'm a little extremist, that's my hot temper. But keep your ears open. Even when I say stuff, you might be like, yeah, she's off on that one doesn't resonate with me today. But it's the climate denial. I'm with you. I can't believe that's still out there.
Yeah. Well, I actually have, now that you mentioned that name, I have seen some, not a lot. So like I can't say too much because I don't know much to talk about, but I have seen something about that channel and that people have been, I guess, kind of warning people to stay away from it. And I wasn't sure exactly why, but that makes sense now that you've said that, because it's kind of like they're trading off this concept of, obviously you would think that Gaia is, to do with saving the planet. Right. So they're kind of like they're trading off this certain perception, but then, like using it as a hook to then try and gaslight people.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like from what you just described.
I heard a few people that were at one of their conventions or something, and it was kind of this weird pedantic podcast, but they were like, Guy is the devil. And I don't know if they meant it's such a business, like it's like almost like the oil business now about get your money, or what he meant. But yeah, I've been hearing that quite a bit lately, that they are not what they represent. But
interesting.
Yes.
Oh, that's another rabbit hole I'll have to dive into then.
I know. I'll bring you all the bad news. So do you have some strategies or some ideas that you can give us?
Yes. So, look, I mean, in terms of straight up, I can sort of offer some suggestions as to what works for me, but I do have to also offer the caveat that whatever works for me and for other people isn't necessarily going to work for everyone, because this isn't a one size fits all. It really is a process of trial and error for each individual. But given that we're all locked down, and like a lot of people are. I guess a lot of people are busier, but then there are a lot of people who have kind of got this newfound time that they can sort of start to explore some new things. So for me, I find yoga is really helpful, but people do need to be mindful of yoga and of other spiritual type practices, because as I explained earlier, they can be that double-edged sword where they can be triggers in themselves.
Right.
But it is this opportunity to kind of try and sit in those spaces of contemplation and mindfulness, and trying to allow your thoughts to come up, and then try to not judge them, and try to just forgive yourself. Try and keep reminding yourself that your own personal darkness is not going to be as bad as what you think it is. So if people want to try yoga and they haven't tried it before, I would start with yin yoga, because that's a really nourishing yoga, and it's a very kind of quiet, soft, gentle. It's a really healing kind of yoga. So I would recommend trying it. And if you feel a little bit funny about it, if it's bringing up too much, then maybe just ease back on it. But really try to honour whatever comes up without judging yourself. I think that anything that connects you to nature in whatever way possible, given that we're in down, it can be tricky for people. But if people are able to garden, even like how you explained that you and a friend are doing some gardening indoors, like if you can even just do that, put some plants inside, and then just maybe spend some time kind of connecting with them, planting the seed and watching it grow. That's a really kind of metaphorically healing thing to do, because I think this time really is about unearthing, but also about planting seeds. So things that are just symbolic like that can be really helpful.
Yes, and it's funny because Courage eats baby food. So I was my dog, and so I have 100 baby food jars. So I didn't know you can order all these tiny succulents on Etsy. They came. I've got succulents everywhere in baby jars, and that's going to be my gift when someone comes to my house. Yes, and you know what, too, folks? If you remember the lady talking about dragons, Kathleen O, you'll want to go back and listen to that episode. She does some breath work that I think she's doing some seminars now that I think are free, or go see what she's doing, because that kind of stuff is great. Yeah, I go to hot yoga and I miss it so much right now.
Yeah. Oh, just put your heater up, Karen.
I know. Turn off the air conditioner, right? Wow,
yeah,
that's great.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. You're in summer. Yeah, just turn off the aircon.
Exactly. And where can everybody find you?
So I am on Facebook. I've set up a Facebook page. It's Dr. Kylie Harris. That's also my handle for Instagram and Twitter, but I haven't had a lot of time for all of my social media. So Facebook is the main place where I'm going to be uploading stuff. And so what I'm putting on my Facebook page is kind of an eclectic mix. I've started my own diary blog in real time. So this is also a thing that I think is going to be really important for people. And I do just want to take a step back for a minute and also like tell people that if you're really struggling, I think that it's a good idea. It's important to talk to professionals. Like I know that a lot of people who have had spiritual emergency experiences before may have had negative experiences with the mental health system. But there are good psychologists out there and good counsellors out there. There are a lot of transpersonal counsellors these days, and they're all moving online because I think it's going to be a growing industry.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I speak to a psychologist myself. She's not transpersonal. I've introduced her to this topic of spiritual emergency. And so they don't need to be kind of like all over the topic themselves. It just needs to be someone who is non-judgmental and is able to allow you to talk about your experience and to explore your experience. So anyone who is able to offer that safe, non-judgmental and validating space for you to explore your experience, I do highly recommend speaking to people. I think that, it can be really healing to just talk about your experience. And so that then leads me into my diary blog, which I've started. I was in the beginning of this pandemic, I did flip out myself. I went into this hypomanic state, and my husband was really worried about me. And it was the first time that I kind of really felt like, oh, holy shit, like I'm really manic.
Well, that did happen in the
And
beginning. Yes, it was crazy.
yeah, because it was just this really, and we didn't get much of a heads up from our government. We were just all of a sudden like, we're in lockdown. And as I said, we've just had the bushfires. This is a really inconvenient truth. We're all still recovering from that. Now, all of a sudden, we're in lockdown, and it's been really traumatic. So I was really feeling the trauma and really feeling like my head was spinning and I was very unbalanced. And so as part of my purging process, I've just started writing about my experience. And it's just like writing in a journal, right? It's not, it's not the professional standard that I would usually write for academia. It's just basically a spewing out of all of what is in my head. It's a stream of consciousness. And I've been finding it really therapeutic.
And it was great. And it was because I was reading some of the beginning ones, and it was, you did wake up every day with a cough and you were sure you had it. That's how I was. I had a stuffy nose. And then by noon I was like, oh, I'm fine. But every morning you had a different, you know what I mean? And it was like, yes. I had a different symptom. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's fine now.
Oh, it's so funny because I just said to my husband last night that it's really kicked into overdrive my OCD tendencies, right? So I feel like I'm trying to avoid people as much as possible because I'm having that OCD feeling of being contaminated, which I need to talk to my psychologist about during our next session. But, I find that if I see a neighbour in the street and they get too close to me, I just want to scream at them, get away from me. Right. And then I feel contaminated. Like I feel like I want to run inside and pull my clothes. And then I cough for the whole afternoon. And then the next day I'm fine.
Right.
So
right.
I think I'm really developing these psychosomatic symptoms as well, where I literally feel then like, I've been infected, I've got a cough, and I'm physically coughing. But then if I don't see anyone for 2 days, then the cough is gone.
I think I might actually be the neighbor you're getting creeped by now. And there's simply a thing of right now in California, other than it being so hot today, the weather is so good. I'm on my bike constantly. And it's funny because here's a terrifying thought. We'll leave on the end of this podcast, but thank God I don't have children because I'm not a vaccinator or a non-vaccinator, but I don't get flu shots and I do not want the vaccination for this. I have to say, I might get it in another country, but here I do not trust any of them. And it's not about tracking devices. It's about aluminum and it's about mercury and all the crap that they put in. And I would rather have it than get vaccinated. And if they're going to start, Bill Gates is saying everybody's got to get vaccinated, have a certificate that says they're vaccinated to get on a plane. And then I'm like, can you give some of us the option of just getting it? I know that's terrible, but this country.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's a whole mother's heads everywhere just exploded. But
this is part. No, you're right. Though this is part of the purging and part of the dark that's going to come up. It's going to be like exploring all of these conspiracy theories that maybe we haven't wanted to go down those holes before, but I think that part of exploring the darkness is exploring those conspiracy theories and seeing if any of them have any
validity,
credibility. Like if you want to look to a nation who's actually doing a stellar job, have a look at New Zealand. They've got a progressive leader and she's just amazing, and she locked the country down immediately into the most severe restrictions anyone in the world, and they're the only Western country with an elimination goal. And she's doing this. Her motivation is for the love of her people. It's not the economy. I mean, obviously she has to try and find a balance, but if there's going to be a vaccine that comes out of somewhere that might be trustworthy, I would be looking at New Zealand.
Right. Yeah. South Korea did a good job too. Not quite like New Zealand, but there's the other ones. Was it Iceland that had the female, not in COVID, but they did the banking crisis, right? We need more female leaders. Come on,
right.
America.
We do. Progressive female leaders, absolutely.
No more old white men.
That's right. And so I guess like what I'm hoping terms of creating this blueprint that I'm talking about to move forward to solve the climate crisis, is that I guess taking that kind of lead from people like Russell Brand, who just put it all out there. They talk about their shortcomings. They're just really honest about their feelings. That's what I'm trying to do in this diary blog. I'm trying to just tell everyone, I flip out about things as well. I am having my own darkness. I've been feeling really angry. I'm so angry at my government and just angry at people in general. I'm being triggered everywhere. So I'm just trying to be really honest and authentic and put all of that out there. And I feel like, especially if this kind of project was to become an international project, I think it would be interesting to, do some kind of analysis on the national psyche of different countries and how, people within different countries are coping with this. What sorts of dark underbellies can we unearth through all of this, and what kind of shared vision can we create to take forward to try and address the climate crisis. Indigenous Australians, for example, they have this practice of storytelling, and they call it yarning. And I just love that name because it just makes you think of a tapestry, right? It's like through storytelling, through shared collective storytelling, we can create this tapestry of understanding and knowledge, but then also creation. We can create the kind of normal that we want to go to after this, not going back to an old normal, but we need to create through a tapestry of shared experience whatever kind of normal is going to serve humanity and is going to serve the planet and is going to ensure that there is a planet for our children to live on. Because I know that's, for me as a parent, that's my driving force, really. It's for my child and for all of the children out there, because it is a terrifying concept that if we go back to business as usual, what kind of legacy are we leaving? So I think that's, for me anyway, that's what it's really bringing up for me. What kind of legacy am I going to leave for my child? Even if the world is screwed and we can't save the planet, at least I can tell him I tried. I tried my very hardest.
I agree. I think it's reaching out to all of us. Well, Kylie, you're amazing. As always, it has been way too long since you've been on my podcast. And I can't thank you enough. You've given us so much to think about. And I'm keep those emails coming to me, because I think I don't know. I just loved this podcast. Loved it.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I try not to hassle you too much because I know you're very busy.
Oh, no.
We've been talking about doing a follow-up for a little while, haven't we? And I just kind of felt like divine timing was going to work for us. And then when this pandemic hit, I was like, oh, it's here, the divine timing.
And that's so true. And also I'm sitting here reconsidering what will my life look like after this, because I was on the run so much, so many readings, so many shows, traveling back and forth, that my life was out of control. And I'm trying to look at how, when I come back, does that change when we're back?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And as part of this global consciousness revolution, I think people should be aware that there could be a period of a global depression, a global darkness as we unearth. And I think after that initial period of chaos that, will look like kind of a psychotic episode, which I think we're already seeing, really, I think that people should be aware that there could be this period of what looks like a global depression. But, that is the opportunity to really go within and face the darkness with that hope that by doing that is what is going to lead us, through it. Because when people get stuck in that darkness, that's when, we see loss of life and people not thinking that they can get out of it. And this is what religious leaders will try and tell us, oh, this is the apocalypse. And that's, they've all been hanging out for this. But I think that what's missing from that kind of interpretation is that we can emerge from this. We can emerge from it reborn. We don't have to get stuck in that darkness. That's not the end. When people get stuck in darkness, they think that's the end. But what that is the dying of the ego. So if we're looking at this on a global scale, it's the death of the corporate ego, of the capitalist ego. It's the death of that global the death of that global narcissism as the more authentic aspects of human nature start to emerge.
And I could not. I'm just so. You said it so beautifully, Kylie.
Thank you, Karen. Something happens when I speak to you. I do get into this altered state and I just start channeling.
We have some good chemistry, don't we? I know. Now, if we can get WhatsApp to stick with it and help us out, it'd be great. But listen, anytime, I think we got a lot to talk about. So I don't even want to say goodbye to you. I want to say until next time.
Until next time. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen.
You got it. And hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And also, I think I had to, Kylie, this is how busy I was. I had to put an ad for myself in this on my show. I had to put an ad to promote myself on my show. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.